Hey guys, I'm Messi and today we'll be going over the mechanics of Azta'rec, the Midnight Season 2 Nemesis Delve boss. You can find the entrance to the Delve of Venomfall Deeps in the northern section of the Coiled Isle at coordinates 5130. Unlike previous seasons, the Nemesis boss was available for testing on the PTR, so this video is based on testing. If this video is still up after the Delve opens on the live realms, it means nothing major has changed. If there are any changes that don't require this video to be re-uploaded, I'll put them in a pinned comment below. That being said, let's get into it. Just like previous Delve bosses, it has two difficulty levels, question mark tier and question mark tier. From here on out, we'll call them tier 1 and tier 2. The first level is unlocked by completing a tier 7 delve with lives remaining and the second with a tier 10 delve. And just like with Nullius in Season 1, there's a special title for those that kill Azta'rec on tier 2 early. However, instead of it just being the first 4,000 players per region, this time anyone who kills Azta'rec on tier 2 within the first week of the season gets the fabled Vanquisher of Azta'rec title. We'll go over the tier 1 mechanics first and then the changes to tier 2. To start with, move out of the noxious bile cone and don't stand in the poison puddles that spawn. The cone is always aimed at you, so pull the boss to one side of the room and stand between the boss and the outer edge. You don't want the poison puddles in the middle of the room. Next, Void Toxin is the standard dot that needs to be dispelled. If you use Healer Valeera, you don't have to worry about this. And when Soul Extinction is cast, interrupt it. When Venom Storm is cast, watch your surroundings. Waves of poison will spawn from the sides of the room and move over the platform. Obviously, don't stand in them. The one and only difficult part of this fight is the Sermon of Ula'Tek intermission, which occurs at 90%, 60% and 30% health. When the boss gets close to those health points, move back to the middle of the room so that you can react faster. As you can see by these markers, the room is split up into 4 very large pizza slices. During the intermission, the boss will cover 3 sections in poison, which will deal a huge amount of damage when the cast finishes. Run to the safe section and remember which one it is. The boss will do this 3 times in a row. Now here's the tricky bit, this is a memory game. You have to remember the order of the sections that were safe. After he does his sermon, he then does the same attacks again with Echo of Ula'Tek. But this time they're invisible, so you have to run to the correct sections again in the same order. Now do note that the boss doesn't take damage during this phase, so you can fully focus on the intermission. Every time he does the intermission, he adds one more attack to the sequence. So at 90% you have to remember the order of 3 attacks, at 60% 4 attacks, and at 30% 5 attacks. And just to be clear, every time the intermission is random. So he will not do the same 3 attacks at 60% as he did at 90%. The way I handled the memory game was to put a marker on the ground of each section, and then I created 4 macros that would say the color in chat. As I moved around to each safe zone, I simply used the macro to keep the order of the safe zones in my chat. Then once the invisible echo began, I just followed the order I put in my chat and continued on. Obviously the macros are a low-tech solution. I imagine that there will be add-ons by the time this is on the live servers. Right, let's talk about the Valeera customizations. First off, this season she has a new choice node. You can equip her with a poison. Personally, I chose the Blood Crypt Toxin to reduce the boss's damage a bit. As far as Curios are concerned, they were bugged on the PTR, but the combat curio I wanted to use was the Corrosive Bile Spear for extra damage. However, that did nothing to the boss, so instead I used the Ouroboros Curse for a bonus stat boost when my health happened to drop below 50% health. For the utility curio, I wanted to use the soul-cracking Dreamcatcher to further increase my damage. However, that one also broke, so I ended up switching to the Venom Infusion curio to get bonus movement speed for the times I accidentally got hit by a poison wave. Alright, moving on to tier 2. There's a couple changes and they really make it a lot more difficult. Personally, I'd say this makes it the second most difficult Nemesis boss after Kai'Veza. To start off, as the fight progresses on tier 2, you're going to get more of everything. The number of waves of poison increases as the fight goes on, and the intermission will start at a sequence of 5 attacks going all the way up to a total of 7 that you need to remember. Unlike Kai'Veza, where every second you could easily make a fatal mistake, shit really only hits the fan during the intermission. Other than dodging many waves of poison and remembering the order of a higher amount of safe zones, the real issue comes in the form of a new ad that spawns during the intermission, the Echo of Azta'rec. The boss still doesn't take damage, so you must put all your DPS into the ad. And you really want it to be dead before the intermission ends. Holding DPS to wait for cooldowns before you push the boss into the intermission is something you should seriously consider doing. The Echo does all the abilities that the boss does, so that means interrupting, poison wave dodging and even more cones, all while dealing with the memory game. The intermission requires a lot of focus on tier 2 because of this. However, there is one difference between the Echo and the boss, and that's the fact that you can use stuns and crowd control on the Echo. So if you need a little breathing room and stop the Echo's cone ability, for example, you can stun it. You could even take it to the extreme if you have a long duration crowd control. As I was writing this portion of the script, I realized, well, if crowd control works, then couldn't you use something like traps to not deal with the ad until after the intermission? So I went back and tested it, and it turns out that yes, you can. If you have the tools on your class, you can crowd control the Echo to deal with it after the intermission. However, and this is a huge ass dimension size however, if you would choose to crowd control and ignore the ad during the intermission, you would have to deal with 2 interrupts after the intermission ends. So unless your spec has 2 different interrupts on top of long duration crowd control or an immunity, this won't be feasible, and instead you'll have to learn to deal with both the Echo and the memory game occurring at the same time. The intermission is really going to be about practice and making sure you have the right tool to help you remember the order of the safe sections. I just want to reiterate as well that it really helps you a ton if you're already close to the middle when the intermission starts. That way you don't have to rush to the first save zone and feel like you're already behind. And that's it. I'm really glad that they tested this on the PTR for the first time, because this allowed us to report some bugs before the Nemesis boss actually went live. Good luck with getting it down. If you liked this video, please like, subscribe and share it with others. I would really appreciate it as it helps with the YouTube algorithm. If you'd like to support me more, you can also follow me over on Twitter, Blue Sky and Twitch, all at BBMezzy. And lastly, I also have a community Discord linked in the description. For now, I'm Mezzy and I'll see you again next time.